We're coming on the air as President Biden is going there, calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal, the first time he's used those words since the invasion of Ukraine started and after hundreds of innocent people have been killed in Russia's attacks. So why now? And what's next as he sends millions of dollars in help and weapons, machine guns, drones, all sorts of stuff? But is it enough for the Ukrainian president? He says no to Congress and to our Lester Holt. We've got a clip from an interview with President Zelensky you will not see anywhere else. Plus, we warned you it was coming, and now it is here. A new interest rate hike that could make your credit card bills go up and maybe complicate any new loans you're trying to get. What the new Fed moves mean for you. And the Justice Department now accusing 5 people of trying to intimidate and harass Americans on behalf of the Chinese government, including the father of an Olympic figure skater. We've got those new details coming up. Plus, the Violence Against Women Act back in effect. A look at our exclusive interview with Angelina Jolie, where she says the U.S. still doesn't realize how big a problem domestic violence really is. That's later in the show. Hey, I'm Hallie, and in just the last couple hours, we heard President Biden's most forceful words yet against Vladimir Putin for the first time, accusing him of being a war criminal. We're going to show it to you. Keep in mind, these comments came really super impromptu on his way out of a different event at the White House. So watch carefully.
Oh, I think he is a war criminal.
Russia's already responding, calling those comments, quote, unacceptable and unforgiving rhetoric. That's coming into us right as we were coming on the air. And all of it's happening on a day when the president's laying out another round of help for Ukraine, approving a package worth $800 million and stressing the U.S. is in this for the long haul.
I want to be honest with you. This could be a long and difficult battle, but the American people will be steadfast in our support of the people of Ukraine in the face of Putin's immoral, unethical attacks on civilian populations.
So let's talk specific. What is he actually doing here? He's sending over to Ukraine hundreds of anti-aircraft missiles, thousands of anti-tank missiles, along with weapons, guns and grenades, drones and ammo. And while that sounds like a lot, it's not really everything Volodymyr Zelensky is looking for. As he told Congress today, he wants a no-fly zone. President Biden says, hey, that's a non-starter. So if not that, then the Ukrainian president wants S-300 missiles, very specifically to fight Russian planes, along with jets, more sanctions, closing ports to Russia. And in his speech to lawmakers, he showed off a video that we are warning you now is extremely graphic. It is a mashup of pictures we've been showing you for weeks of people trying to get medical care, of the attacks that have been happening, the buildings destroyed, people trying to run to safety, juxtaposing these images of everyday Ukrainian life as it used to be with what it looks like now. The attacks not on military sites, but on homes. You can see President Zelensky getting a standing ovation from Congress. And he also showed that he really understands his audience. He's shaping his message to Americans. He referenced Pearl Harbor, 9/11, attacks from the air on the U.S., and he made a very direct appeal to President Biden.
You are the leader of the nation, of your great nation. I wish you to be the leader of the world. Being the leader of the world means to be the leader of peace.
We're going to get the latest on the ground in Ukraine with Hallie in just a second. But we started in Washington with Shannon Pettypiece. And today, Shannon, we heard, again, breaking in just the last couple hours, that impromptu moment by President Biden, a pretty provocative step at this point, because until now, he really had not said. I mean, he'd been avoiding the term, specifically war criminal. The White House has said he's speaking from his heart, but why now?
Well, and as you noted, we've been specifically asking the White House for weeks if these actions by Putin amount to a war crime, bombing hospitals, attacking civilians, not letting open corridors for civilians to evacuate. The White House has hesitated to use these phrases. They've said there's a legal process that has to play out to determine whether someone is a war criminal or whether war crimes have been committed. And the significance of that is that if through this legal process it is determined someone is a war criminal or they have committed war crimes, they can be tried. And of course, we have seen that many, many times throughout history. But as you noted here, the president, obviously sidestepping that legal process, which the White House said is continuing to play out, and giving his own opinion here. And you you mentioned the impromptu nature of that. Just like a little more color from some of my colleagues who were in the room. A reporter initially shouted the question, and the president said no. He thought they asked if he was going to call Putin. And then the president, though, took the initiative to come back and say, what was the question again? And the reporter repeated the question. That's when he said, oh, yeah, I think he's a war criminal, and left. And, I mean, as you noted, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki indicated that this was the president speaking from his heart. He was giving, in a sense, his own personal opinion, but that it was based off of the atrocities that the president had seen play out on television, is what the press secretary said.
I just asked one top Democratic senator about this on my other show, the comments from the president. I want to play for you his reaction. Senator John Tester. Do you agree with it, Senator?
Well, look, I think that if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and water runs off its back like a duck, it's a duck.
He also told me he is satisfied. He thinks the package from President Biden is generous, what was announced from Ukraine today. What are the next steps here, right? Where does this go from here? As we're about to hear from Hallie in a second, the fighting is intensifying in Ukraine.
Yes, well, I mean, the White House indicated, and the president said today, there will be more. This is a first step. It certainly indicates that the White House sees this as a conflict that is going to be playing out for quite some time, and that it's going to get extremely bloody and violent when you see this list of thousands of anti-aircraft, anti-tank missiles that are being sent, when you see 20,000 rounds of small arms ammunition being sent. It paints a picture for you of just how prolonged and bloody the White House sees this conflict continuing. I think as far as what is next, the president is going to be traveling to Europe to meet with NATO leaders next. They have been very unified up until this point, and certainly unified when it came to sanctions and the deterrence efforts. But now that we are in a full-scale conflict that is entering its fourth week, those leaders are going to have to meet and discuss how that unified response is going to carry out through the coming weeks and months, potentially.
Shannon, petty piece outside the White House there with that breaking news for us. Shannon, thank you. Let me go to Hallie now, who's on the ground in Lviv. And Hallie, we know again and again, we've heard that call from President Zelensky for a no-fly zone, which the U.S. largely considers a non-starter, because that could, enforcement of that, could put us in direct conflict with Russia, which is not a situation that the government right now wants to see. President Zelensky pushed back on that with our Lester Holt. I want to play his response to some of President Biden's concerns. Watch.
President Biden has been very clear. He's worried about provocations that could trigger World War III. Do you understand his concern there, and do you agree that it wouldn't take much to end up in World War III?
Well, nobody knows whether it may have already started, and what is the possibility of this war if Ukraine will fall, in case Ukraine will fall. It's very hard to say. And we've seen this 80 years ago when the Second World War has started. And there were similar tragedies in the history. Nobody would be able to predict when the full-scale war would start and how it will end and who will put an end to that. In this case, we have the whole civilization at stake.
He's talking about the stakes of this war here, and this new video that's out now is apparently from a theater in Mariupol that's been flattened by Russian troops. NBC News can't confirm that detail, but Ukraine says hundreds of civilians were there. Tell me what you're seeing on the ground today.
That's right, Hallie. Mariupol is just a devastated city. The Red Cross described it as a worst-case scenario there, and the reports that are coming out of Mariupol are just devastating. Those pictures you showed of the theater, hundreds of people were taking shelter in that theater. We don't have any reports of just how many casualties and fatalities have come out of there, but it doesn't look good. We've heard scenes of Mariupol of people, dead people lying on the streets there, people that have had limbs blown off aren't being accepted in hospitals because they just can't treat them there. So it may not be World War III, but for the people of Mariupol, this is as bad as a war gets. And for other cities as well, like in Kyiv, the President Zelensky gave his address out of Kyiv today. He said this is a city that's being hit by air, by missiles. We had a chance today to speak to some people that had fled Kyiv to here in Lviv. Let's take a listen to their experience and what they had to say.
We decided that it's quite dangerous, and You hear explosions all the time. You hear not only siren, but explosions. So you understand that in one day, probably, the bomb can be in your house.
And those kids you saw, those are part of the 1.5 million kids that have been displaced from their homes, and they have to look for new lives. It's hard to fathom, suddenly having to leave your home, pick up what few belongings you have, and move to another city and rely on the goodwill of friends to find somewhere to live.
You talk about Mariupol, Ali, and I can't help but thinking about all day today. The Associated Press that has 2 journalists in Mariupol. I think the only international media that's actually remaining in that city, describing what it is like, right? The bodies of toddlers, an 18-month-old, on the ground, and just the devastation that is happening in that city. And yet you have the Pentagon still sort of saying, listen, in other parts of the country, the Russian military is at a kind of stalemate here, which, 2-3 weeks into this now, is a rather extraordinary comment.
That's right. I mean, they've been bogged down. The Russian military machine didn't work as effectively as everybody thought. They've been plagued with logistical problems. At the beginning of this war, we thought it was going to be some, strategic lightning strike by Putin, but I don't think he accounted on the fierce resistance of the Ukrainian people. They're just not willing to give up their towns and cities. The mayor of Kyiv said, they can blow up our buildings, they can, take the city down, but they're not going to dampen the spirit of the people, that they're just going to keep on fighting. So I think the equation may have changed for Vladimir Putin. And, those peace talks are going on both sides. At the end of the day, Hallie, both sides need these peace talks to work. The Ukrainians need it so their cities and villages don't get devastated. And the Russians are taking military losses and their economy is being battered. So I guess both sides want a way out of this. The Russians need to save face, and the Ukrainians need to save their country.
Is there any glimmer of hope in those peace talks, Ali? I mean, we hear sort of mixed things about it, but you listen to what Sergei Lavrov said today, like there maybe is some hope for reaching a compromise. He's also the same guy that said that Russia wasn't planning to invade, right? So huge grain of salt there, but what's your sense?
Yeah, exactly. You have to take everything the Russians say with a grain of salt. I mean, going back to Mariupol, the Russians were even saying that, the Ukrainians had staged that attack on the theater to blame the Russians. But yes, there was a bit of a glimmer of hope out of those talks. Zelensky said that the Russians are being more reasonable. They're listening to the demands. But the Ukrainians are sticking to the outline of what they want. They want an immediate end to this war. They want all Russian troops to end. But they've also hinted that there may be some compromise. And that compromise may be NATO. I mean, I think the Ukrainians have pretty much realized now that joining NATO isn't going to happen anytime soon. So maybe if they take that off the table, they write that down in a legal document, that might be something that would edge the Russians to ending this war. And it's a very important point for the Russians, for the Ukrainians, not to join NATO and remain neutral, as they say.
Ali Arouzi, we're glad to have you there on the ground live in Lviv for us tonight. Thanks for being with us. You can hear more of Lester Holt's exclusive interview, by the way, with the Ukrainian president tonight on NBC Nightly News. That, of course, is at 6:30 Eastern on your local broadcast NBC station. The Justice Department today announcing criminal charges against 5 different Chinese government agents because they were trying to intimidate critics, they say, of the Xi regime living in the U.S. They were stalking them. They were harassing them. They were surveilling them. Watch.
The defendants face a variety of charges, including conspiring to act as agents of the PRC government, to commit interstate harassment, and to bribe a public official.
The people targeted include the father of Olympic figure skater Alyssa Liu. When he lived in China, Arthur Liu helped to organize pro-democracy demonstrations. Another person, a Democratic candidate for Congress on Long Island who was protesting in 1989 at Tiananmen Square and served in the military. 3 of the defendants have been arrested. 2 are still out there somewhere. Joining us now is Pete Williams. So, Pete, what harassment, stalking, spying, what did this look like? What did this mean? What were these Chinese agents accused of doing?
So what the government says is they were hiring private investigators in the U.S. to try to go spy on these people, to dig up dirt. In the case of Xiang Yan, the candidate for Congress, what the Chinese handler said to the private investigator is, find something damaging about him. And if you can't find anything, hire a prostitute to go get with him. And if
make
that
up a
doesn't
scandal,
work,
basically.
And if that doesn't work, make something up. And if that doesn't work, maybe we could just injure him. Maybe you could just beat him. Maybe you could find a way to get him involved in a car accident. So on the one hand, pretty ham-handed stuff. In the case of Arthur Liu, they hired the Chinese hired a man who was a former former corrections officer in Florida, who actually went to the Bay Area, went to Arthur Liu's house, did surveillance, and then, according to the court documents, sort of padded his expense account, if you will, saying that he went up to Arthur Liu's house, knocked on the door. Arthur Liu came out and said, go away. I talked to Arthur Liu today. He said, no, actually, that never happened. I was on an airplane when he came to the house. The FBI told me he was coming. So, yes, sort of ham-handed. The good news here is that in both the cases where the Chinese had contacted private investigators in the U.S., the private investigators started out saying, okay, well, this is a fairly routine case. They want to know where this person lives and what their address is. I can get all that stuff. And then as the Chinese began to ask for more and more things, the private investigator said, oh, wait a minute, contacted the FBI, which then was consensually monitoring all of their communications with the Chinese. But on the other hand, it's very disturbing to think that China is sending people to the U.S., and we have no idea how many, who are still trying to spy on, intimidate, harass, embarrass people in the U.S. And now we have them trying to target a candidate for Congress. The FBI said today they don't know that the Chinese has ever tried to do that.
Right. You talked to Arthur Liu, you said, was he scared? Did he feel at any point nervous about this?
He said he's a little surprised that the Chinese are still spying on him 30 plus years after Tiananmen. But he said, years ago, the Chinese sent a student to the U.S. to spy on me. And I didn't know it was a spy. I invited the student into the house. I helped him study. I helped him find work. And he eventually sort of collapsed and said, they sent me here to spy, but I'm not going to do it. So he said it's disturbing, but it's not surprising that they're still that interested in him.
Real quick, these two that are still outstanding, these two accused government agents, what, the FBI now is working to hunt them down? Is that how this works?
Yes, but if they've gone back to China, obviously it's going to be very hard for us to get them. Their only hope would be if they ever try to travel somewhere else, Interpol or somebody else will grab them for us.
Pete Williams, our justice correspondent, covering this intriguing story for us tonight. Pete, thank you.
You bet.
So, Fed Chair Jerome Powell says today he's looking at solid growth for the economy after interest rates went up. That interest rate hikes just a few hours ago. We knew it was coming, right? We've been talking about it on this show. We were like, hey, guess what? The Fed's going to hike the interest rate. Today, the Fed did just that, up 0.25%. It's probably going to go up a few more times this year. Why? All of this is to try to fight inflation, right? Inflation is costing most of us, like the average household in this country, an extra $300 a month, according to some estimates, compared to a year ago. Okay, so rates are going up. What does that mean? It means you might pay a little bit more on your credit card bill. If you're looking for a new mortgage, a new car loan, maybe a home equity line of credit, those rates are probably going to rise. If you already have a mortgage and it's fixed rate, you're in good shape. Same with the car loan or federal student loans. Those rates are locked in. CNBC's Steve Leisman now joins me to break down what is next. So, Steve, listen, this is big financial, big economic news to come. One of the things that you and I talked about 24 hours ago was people were going to be reading the tea leaves, the signals from Jerome Powell. What is the long-term outlook from the Fed here? That's what's going to really make a difference. What tea leaves do we have to read tonight, then?
The tea leaves, I don't know what you'd call it, like an apple blossom herbal kind of thing. Rates are going up. They're going higher. And the Fed told us that in their forecast. Maybe not for sure because they didn't decide it. But ultimately, the Fed puts out a forecast and they see rates going up towards 2% by the end of this year. Pretty aggressive and almost towards 3% by the end of next year. So the Fed is being pretty aggressive in raising interest rates. And so the things that you use credit for, like maybe buying a car, buying a house, maybe things you buy on your credit card, those things are going to get a little more expensive to carry debt on.
You talk about housing. We know that it has been hot, hot, hot. I think in some markets, it's just out of reach for some people, right, because of how expensive things are. Would this do anything to help cool the housing market down, you think?
So it normally would.
You say normally.
I don't know how to tell you, but things are incredibly weird right now is all I can tell you. You remember what Hunter S. Thompson said, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro? Well, that's where we are right now. What you have is you have a huge deficit of housing stock in this country. We have been underbuilding housing for many years. Normally, the Fed raises interest rates, the housing market cools down, prices get cooler, everything is a little bit easier after that. But because we have such a big deficit of housing, I'm not sure. We're seeing some weakness in the housing market, but I would not expect prices to fall very sharply despite the rise in mortgage rates, because I think it's because there's a huge lack of supply.
So when the Fed chair says things like the labor market is tight, maybe to an unhealthy level, what does that mean? Help us translate that. Why is that a big deal?
It means that there are a lot of job openings there and that we don't have enough people to fill those jobs. And it means that in order to fill those jobs, wages have to go up. Wages have to go up. Companies have to charge more. Companies have to charge more. People pay more. And you have higher inflation. Higher inflation, people want more money. And then you have what's called a wage price spiral. And that's the thing that Powell is trying to avoid.
So, using your weird pro talents and skills, Steve, are we headed for a recession? Or do you think what the Fed is doing is going to stave that off? It's a fine line to walk, right? Because he's like, on the one hand, we want to tamp down, these inflation rates and raise it, but we don't want to do it so much that we tank the economy.
I will duck that question in the first instance by telling you you're asking the right question, that it is indeed this trade-off between raising rates to cool it down and get the economy to run a little bit slower, to bring down inflation and do what we call a soft landing. Whether or not that's possible, and by the way, we didn't talk about this, but you obviously have this horrific war going on in Ukraine that threatens two things: higher prices on oil and higher food prices, because of course Ukraine is a big breadbasket for the world, as was, by the way, Russia too. So those two things are in danger. You have another wave of higher prices coming this way. I think if the Fed can maintain steady interest rates and not have to do something drastic like really hike a lot in a drastic way, we have a chance of getting out of this because we do have low unemployment. We've got a lot of demand coming to us and a more normalization of the economy on the other side of the COVID shutdowns that we had. I think that's going to help. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tight. But I think getting out of this without a recession and just a cooling of the economy is possible. That's certainly the Fed's outlook.
Steve Leisman from CNBC. Always great to have you on, Steve, especially on a big day of big Fed news. Thanks. Sure. So we just learned a couple of minutes ago, as we were in this conversation, that over in Japan, in news overseas, one person has been killed and 69 people are hurt because of that 7.3 magnitude earthquake that hit off the coast of Fukushima. We know more than 2 million homes report they have no power. A bunch of train lines have stopped operating. And look at some of the images we're seeing coming out of there. This was post-earthquake. I mean, stuff's all over the floor. The grocery store, the shaking lasted a couple of minutes. Some people as far as Tokyo, 150 miles away, felt it. We also learned the tsunami alerts have reportedly been canceled. That had been a real concern because this is the same area that was devastated back in 2011 after another earthquake and tsunami killed more than 20,000 people and caused a nuclear disaster, of course, at the Fukushima power plant, displacing almost 500,000. Kathy Park is joining us now. Okay, Kathy, bring us up to speed. It feels like there have been a lot of developments since we heard news of this earthquake a couple hours ago.
Hallie, that's absolutely right. Obviously, the northern portion of Japan right now, they are on high alert after this powerful earthquake shook the region. As you mentioned, the tsunami warning has since expired, but this disaster has turned deadly. At least one dead so far, dozens of people injured, and millions were in the dark for several hours, but it looks like the power is starting to come back on. But the big concern moving forward in the days ahead are these aftershocks. Already, at least 2 aftershocks have been reported in that area. And of course, officials are warning residents to kind of take it easy. And obviously, this happened before midnight. So as people were sleeping, so it's going to be daybreak and people are going to be assessing the damage. But right now, it seems like it's minimal at this point. We've been kind of looking at social media. Some folks are posting some images of furniture as well as appliances in their apartment buildings that have kind of been tousled and strewn about. But as far as the damage, it looks like it's minimal, which is certainly some good news, Hallie.
That is for sure. Kathy Park live for us on that. Kathy, thank you. Coming up after the break, we have some breaking news, new details, the names of the 9 people killed in a terrible crash on a Texas highway overnight. The victims range in age from 13 years old to 38, many of them between the ages of 18 to 22. They were college golfers. The students from the University of the Southwest in New Mexico were on their way back from a golf tournament when the crash happened along a 2-lane road near Midland. Police say a pickup truck crossed the center line, colliding with the van on a road where the speed limit is 75 miles an hour. 2 survivors were airlifted to a nearby hospital. We'll have a lot more coming up after the break, including, of course, Two people caught up in a dispute between two countries. Two British nationals held hostage in Iran finally headed home. How they got caught up in a decades-long dispute with Tehran next. And technology finally catching up with the pandemic. How Apple is making unlocking your phone a little easier. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Biden administration says it will let nearly 70,000 Afghan immigrants apply for temporary protected status. What does that do? Well, it shields them from being deported and gives them access to work permits. It's going to last for 18 months. Number 2, historically black colleges and universities that have been targeted by recent bomb threats can now apply for new funding, new money. These grants would provide more mental health resources, more on-campus security. In the last 3 months, nearly a third of the country's HBCUs have gotten bomb threats. Number 3, new federal data shows high school kids are taking harder classes, but that is not necessarily translating to higher scores on standardized tests. Experts think that might be because of tougher state requirements or that classes are not covering the material expected on those national tests. Number 4, pediatricians in North Texas are reporting seeing a surprising late spike in flu cases. You know, the season usually starts in November, peaks between January and February, but doctors are seeing some pretty severe cases right now. They think it could be because many states have dropped COVID rules like mask wearing. Number 5, speaking of masks, Apple just released a new update that lets you open your iPhone with your mask on with your face recognition technology. All you have to do is go into settings, update your phone to the latest iOS version. And even though most mask mandates are dropping, I guess if you still do wear yours, better late than never. Tonight, a homecoming years in the making. British-Iranian dual citizens Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe and Anousheh Shouri are on their way home to the UK, released from Iran after being detained in 2016 and 2017. Also released on furlough, Morad Tabaz, detained for 4 years. The British Foreign Secretary, writing in the same statement of their release, the UK also settled a $525 million debt with Iran over an arms deal, an issue long thought to be the reason for their detainment. Zaghari-Ratcliffe's family has been working on her release for years, and today is a day they'd never thought would come. After nearly 6 years of being detained in Iran, British-Iranian dual citizen Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe is on her way home. An aid worker for the Thomson Reuters Foundation and a previous administrator at the BBC, she was visiting her parents in Iran back in April of 2016. That's when she was arrested by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard at the airport for unknown reasons and later accused of spying, a claim she denied. In August, then Prime Minister Theresa May raised concerns over her detainment to Iranian President Rouhani. 1 month later, Zaghari-Ratcliffe was sentenced to 5 years in jail, accused of plotting to overthrow the Iranian government. In the fall of 2017, Tehran's prosecutor general claimed she had been training journalists at the BBC, ran an online course that taught encryption, and had links to the UK government. Then UK Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said she was simply teaching people journalism before she was arrested. Her family and employer denied it, and Johnson walked it back.
I acknowledge that the words I used were open to being misinterpreted, and I apologize. I apologize to Mrs. Zaghari-Ratcliffe and her family if I have inadvertently caused them any further anguish.
In early 2018, Zaghari-Ratcliffe's family accused Iran of using a multi-million-dollar dispute over a shipment of tanks Britain owed them as leverage for her detainment, a claim both governments said was false. She was sentenced to yet another year in prison in April of 2021 after an Iranian court said she was found guilty of spreading propaganda against the regime, referring to a 2009 protest she attended outside the Iranian embassy. But this week, an emotional light at the end of a long, dark tunnel.
It's been a long journey that people have been keeping us following it on the news, on petitions, with the government, but in the end, she's coming home.
Stories of aid workers like Zaghari-Ratcliffe are not uncommon. Workers have been arrested in the past on these false charges of spying, accused of involvement in terrorist or opposition groups, even for delivering food in countries ravaged by war. Over the years, attacks against aid workers have been on the rise. According to the Aid Worker Security Database, 2021 saw 130 aid workers killed, 110 kidnapped, and 183 hurt, most commonly in Africa and countries like Syria, Afghanistan, and Myanmar. In Mexico, we're learning now that another journalist has been shot and killed there, making him the 8th journalist murdered in that country this year. Prosecutors say Armando Linares, the director of Monitor Michoacan website, was shot and killed Tuesday in a town in the mountains west of Mexico City. There were 9 journalists killed in Mexico all of last year. Of course, it's only March. and 8 have been killed this year. It's close to 1 a week. Look at this. All these people trying to tell stories being killed. And still, the government is claiming the situation is under control. Today, Linares' website still has his last story up. It was about a festival celebrating monarch butterflies. Coming up. The invasion of Ukraine has led to Europe's biggest refugee crisis since World War II. In Poland, they've even had to turn a former shopping mall into a refugee center. Ellison Barber is there and joins us next. Plus, the fight over social media in Russia, why some tech giants are fighting to stay online after the break. With gas prices spiking, some thieves are getting creative. We'll talk about how bandits are organizing to steal your gas coming up. But first, we want to bring you tonight's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. Russia's isolation from the rest of the world on social media getting more and more intense every single day. Now today, you've got Slack. You know, Slack telling NBC News it's suspending accounts in Russia, which, if you ask some of my colleagues at NBC News what they'd do without Slack, they'd say it would grind us to a halt. It's happening on Monday. Russia cut off Instagram. Before that, Facebook was banned. Vaughn Hilliard has more on all of it.
Russia's geopolitical separation from Europe and the rest of the West is increasingly becoming a social separation, too. The latest this week, Instagram, joining a host of social media networks now banned by the Russian government.
Facebook will be blocked in Russian.
Meta in a statement saying millions of ordinary Russians will find themselves cut off from reliable information, silenced from speaking out. We will continue to do everything to restore our services.
Eliminating access to social media dramatically influences people's access to news, particularly the real-time news that people have begun to rely on, especially in a time of crisis.
Twitter now also forbidden, but both networks actively working to take down disinformation accounts operated from within Russia and Belarus as part of its propaganda warfare.
These are two separate but sort of in tandem anti-Ukrainian disinformation operations.
These social media platforms run by private companies, but whose operations are viewed as consequential and of concern to the White House.
I agree. I don't have anything to read out for you in terms of private conversations with Twitter or any other social platform, but I'm happy to check and see if there's more. Go ahead.
YouTube this weekend globally banishing Russia's 2 state-funded TV operations, RT and Sputnik, from being viewed.
What more obligations do American social media companies have who are operating in the region?
And what we need to do, I think, as the West, as the U.S. government, is make sure that doesn't cut off access to accurate information. But it's going to be a very tough road forward. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Western companies.
Then there is Chinese-owned TikTok, which has chosen to no longer allow Russians to post new content or live stream, including messages of dissent against Putin. TikTok citing Russia's new law banning user-generated content that Russia considers to be, quote, fake news about its military. Karen Kornblue is the former U.S. ambassador to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
They want to make it as difficult as possible for these platforms to operate, even in that neutral way. So I think they'll find it hard to provide that window into the outside world. And they may find ways to do that, but I think the Russians are going to make it increasingly hard.
The decisions made by both Russia and American media companies creating undisputed, immediate impact, but their intended consequences playing out in real time.
To what extent is it possible to make an already socially connected society disconnected and socially isolated?
I expect that there are going to be dark web communiques that will facilitate how people really think. And those will serve as platforms for protest, platforms for messaging, platforms for rebellion if people choose to follow those.
Vaughn Hilliard is joining us now. You know, Vaughn, what's so interesting about this is you look at what happened 11 years ago, the Arab Spring, when social media was in a sort of a very different phase of its existence, but was so important to those calls for democracy. Now, you know, over a decade later, you've got misinformation that's become its own industry online.
Right. 11, 12 years ago, we were just beginning to have those conversations about user-generated content and its impacts on not only individuals and groups' abilities to demonstrate. You noted the Arab Spring here. But if you fast forward to where we are today, we now have user-generated content that directly competes with traditional news outlets, and groups and governments, frankly, including Russia, are much more intentional about how they use that user-generated content, a space which now they know and understand they can have influence within and compete against the likes of traditional news media. Of course, even here within the U.S., Hallie, that is why there has been such a great extent of focus, even among U.S. political figures, about the influence and power that these very tech companies, Meta and Twitter, Instagram and Slack, hold, because they, to a great extent, are able to control over what can and should exist on those platforms.
Vaughn Hilliard, live for us on that. Vaughn, thank you so much. We're learning more today about the absolute devastation of the refugee crisis, the economic cost, the human cost, really, of Russia's war on Ukraine. Poland alone has taken in 1.7 million people leaving that country. And now a former shopping mall in one city has been turned into a refugee center. Look at this. Like, people used to shop in these stores, right? Now there's cots there. Now they're sleeping. Cots lined up and pillows, sleeping where these stores used to be. Ellison Barber joins us now from Poland. This is this refugee center that's been thrown together basically at a mall, Ellison. What's it like when you're there? There's a lot of kids there. I mean, they're living there right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little surreal when you walk in because it looks exactly like the malls we have in the States. You know, there's this big open atrium where you imagine at some point in time there was a Santa Claus set up around Christmas time and people shopping on the upper area. And that upper area, that's where this shelter is. And instead of clothing racks, they've been replaced with cots. There were these little kind of makeshift stores that you typically see along the way to the food court, places where there might be eclairs to get your ears pierced. Those have been transformed into playrooms for the children staying here and kitchens so that mothers, some of the older kids, they can sort of have a bit of time on their own to make meals, things like that. The people running this site, they tell us that there is no limit for how long people can stay here. It's however long they need. Some people have come and they say they only want to stay a night or so. They have other plans for where they'll go next. But other people, they have no idea where they'll go next, and they might be there for a week, 2 weeks, or longer, and they are prepared to keep people at this mall that long. They were expanding the rooms with cots into other former department stores while we were there, and they had plans in place to continue that expansion because there is such a demand for shelter. Yeah. They know the city cannot meet it in conventional ways, hotels, accommodations like that, so they're turning to this. And you mentioned it's a lot of children. We met 3 siblings who had just gotten there, and they told us just a little bit about their story. Listen. Did she understand what was going on?
I think no.
What sort of things did you see and hear?
Що ти бачив там в Україні? Explosions.
Did you know what war was before this?
Ти розумів, що таке війна взагалі до цього, до того, як ти побачив її? No, I can't say that.
It's a river of blood. It's loud noises. It's terrible.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're back in Ukraine?
My school, my classmates, my parents, and that's all, I think.
Those siblings, the youngest, the little girl, she's 4 years old, her older brother 10, the oldest 16. When I'd finished talking to them, or kind of as I was still talking to them, Hallie, I asked the 10-year-old, I said, let's talk about happy things for a minute, because he'd said that he was not happy here, even though people were being nice, that he wanted to go home. And so I said, what do you like to do? What are you most looking forward to do when you get to finally go back home to Ukraine? And he looked at me and he just said, I'll get happy. That was his answer to what do you want to do when you go home? I'll get happy. It was such a simple answer, but it tells you so much about what these children are going through. They're laughing, smiling, doing the best they can, but they've gone through a traumatic experience. They don't want to be here.
No.
They'd be happier, and they will be happy when they go home, but they don't know when that will be.
And their parents, I'm sure, feel like they have absolutely no other choice at this point. Did you talk to that family's mom or dad? Was anybody with them?
Yeah, we talked to their mother. And, one thing I have noticed continuously as we are reporting on this is you will see kids laughing, waving at you, playing, but you'll often see their parents sort of off in corners, very visibly, emotionally upset. There was one border crossing where I will never forget listening to kids giggling and playing and seeing and hearing a mother in a corner on the phone just sobbing. I think you see a lot of mothers with their kids doing the best they can to kind of go in this survivor mode, figure out what needs to be done, get them what they need right now. But there is this just massive sense of devastation all around. And the kids feel that too, especially the older ones, and they're trying to step in and help, which is heartbreaking because they're kids and they shouldn't have to be doing that, but they are.
16, 10, trying to step in to help your 4-year-old sister. I mean, that's so much to bear. Ellison Barber, thank you so much for bringing us that reporting. We're glad to have you there in Poland. Still to come on this show, she's an actress and activist, and she's talking with NBC News about what's important to her. Angelina Jolie, with her own Kate Snow, on new protections for domestic violence and what we just talked about with Ellison, that growing refugee crisis. Plus, San Francisco teachers are staying after school, staging a sleep-in all over a technical problem? We'll explain in a minute. Spiking gas prices now mean more gas station bandits. Have you heard about this? They are going to major extremes to try to get what they want. We'll talk about how they're doing it coming up. But first, NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Northeast Bureau, a new round of DNA testing will be reviewed in the murder conviction of Adnan Syed. That's a name you might remember from the podcast Serial. That kind of tech did not exist when he was first on trial. He's serving a life sentence for allegedly killing an ex-high school girlfriend. From our West Coast Bureau, nearly 24 teachers and staff slept inside their office in the school district Monday. Look at this. Why? They haven't gotten their full paycheck since January. The school district blames its new payroll system. They say it's a technical glitch, basically. They're working to fix the issue ASAP. Teachers say they're going to sue if they don't get this fixed soon. Our Southern Bureau reporting roughly $30,000 worth of turtles, yes, 30 grand worth of turtles, are back with their breeder after they were stolen. Detectives think a handyman swiped the reptiles. That person's now in custody, and most of the turtles were returned, but a few are still MIA. In an NBC News exclusive, top Justice Department prosecutor Andrew Adams has a warning for Russian oligarchs. He's coming for them, and he will track down what he's calling ill-gained fruits of a luxurious lifestyle. How about that? Adams is a veteran corruption prosecutor who's leading what's called the Klepto Capture Task Force, recently started by the Justice Department. We've been talking about Russian oligarchs on this show, right? This is the team that's going to be going after them as a result of those sanctions put in place when Russia invaded Ukraine. This means fighting any efforts to try to undermine these sanctions on Russian banks, going after people who might use crypto, right, to get around the rules like a loophole. Maybe even seizing the yachts, the really fancy apartments, the really nice boats and houses we've all seen that belong to these oligarchs. Tom Winter, who else got this exclusive interview and joins us now, our chief oligarch correspondent. Tell us about this, because this is interesting. I mean, this is a guy at the center of this investigation who is leading this charge against these really rich guys that are running in Putin's circles that the U.S. wants to crack down on.
Andrew Adams wakes up in the morning, Hallie, and thinks about where is the money coming from, where is it going, and what's the crime underneath it. And that's exactly what he told us. That's his game, and that's the game of the dozen or so other prosecutors that are going to be working with him, both in New York and in other districts around the country. He's got FBI agents. He's got Homeland Security investigations agents, and they're going to be focused on an underlying crime. So they got to find... If they're going to look at somebody, they have to say, okay, has this person committed a crime, and have the proceeds of that crime, is that something that we can go and seize? So they can't just walk up to the yacht and say, hey, give us the keys, Captain, and slap a sticker on the side of it and say it's ours now. They have to do a whole lot of research. Hallie, 10 million documents, 10 million pages of documents can be included in these investigations. Thousands of banker boxes, you know, the old school stuff that we used to see being carted out of an accountant's house. Interviews, all sorts of things go into these investigations. It's going to take some time. But I think the big key, based on our discussion, is something he's focused on, which are who are these kind of 1-800 money launderer, I joke, but these money laundering networks that exist to help out these oligarchs and sanctioned individuals get around those sanctions, move that money around, get those fancy villas, get those fancy condos. And I think by focusing on those networks, he's going to figure out here who's been breaking the law and who's been on the right side of it. And that's going to be an interesting component of this investigation.
Tom Winter, a fascinating inside look. Glad you're with us. I'm sure we'll see you tomorrow to talk more about something new on oligarchs. Tom, thank you.
You got it.
So, you know, gas prices are still going up across the country, at least for now, even though oil prices have started to drop. But because of this spike in gas prices, you've got this group of thieves, bandits in Southern California who've been busting gas pumps, coming in with trucks with these big plastic tanks to steal it. It's part of this recent rise in gas thefts. We've seen reports of this all across the U.S. People drilling into tanks underneath cars to steal gas, right? Some gas stations have lost tens of thousands of dollars worth of gas. Look, that's one of the drill holes there. Now you've got gas station employees and owners that are coming together, trying to sound the alarm, to basically warn each other about these kinds of things. Joining me now is Zincle Esumwa. Tell us about this, Zincle, because, you know, people don't love higher gas prices, obviously. You now see these reports of gas theft around the country. How real is it? How big of a deal?
Yeah, Hallie, it's a big deal and it's very real. A lot of what I've been reporting on, I never thought would actually happen, but is in fact. So my producer and I, Arlene Aguas Vivas, have been talking to gas station owners, and law enforcement, and they describe gas theft. And they say that it's happening in three key ways, right? One is people are actually hacking the systems that you get your gas from. And so the gas system thinks you're pumping slowly when in fact they're pumping hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fuel. Secondly, they're actually parking on top of where a lot of this gasoline is housed. You can see a video here where trucks are actually going to steal from a gas station. And you see this man running right now. Police arrived and intercepted it. That happened in California. But most of the time, it's happening under the radar. And people don't notice until they're balancing their books, station owners. So as you say, a lot of them are alerting each other to what's going on. And this is a big concern to consumers. And the third way that a lot of this gas is being stolen is to individuals. So they're actually drilling holes underneath the cars to gas tanks. So obviously a big concern to consumers and to drivers. I am not a driver, but I know a lot of people are really worried about what's going on. And it's something to watch as the prices continue to go up, Hallie.
Zincle Esumwa. Thank you so much. Listen, it's interesting. It's interesting to look at that video there. I am a driver, right? I mean, I'm a bike commuter too, but also a driver. This is something people really care about. I know we're going to see more of your reporting on Top Story with our friend Tom Yamas coming up in just a little bit. Zincle, thank you. So you know who's at the White House today? Angelina Jolie. Why? Because of the renewal of the Violence Against Women Act, something that is really important to her. It's a law that expired in 2018. It's back now, and it's aimed to protect and support survivors of domestic violence, of sexual assault, and stalking. Jolie, of course, is not just an incredibly famous actor. She's also the UN Special Envoy for Refugees. And Ruth Glenn, the CEO and president of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, had been pushing for the reauthorization of the law. In an NBC News exclusive, the two women sat down with our own Kate Snow, look at this right here, saying they fought for this day because the system that is supposed to protect women is unbelievably broken. Kate is joining us now in Washington. Kate, in person. It's so good to see you as you came down for this incredible exclusive. Tell me a little bit about this because, you know, I live here and I've seen video like Angelina Jolie. You know, I know people who cover Capitol Hill. Right. They're always getting video of her because she's here fighting for this all the time.
The last few years, she's been on Capitol Hill a lot and meeting with all the kind of the key sponsors and people that she needed to corral, she and other advocates, to get this, it's called VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, reauthorized. It had been sitting for a long time, for years. So now it has been signed into law as of yesterday. Today they had this celebration.
Big thing at the White House today. Yep.
Two things that Angelina Jolie, there's a lot in this law, but two things that she really cares about. One, a measure that she pushed for to look at the way we do forensics when we're looking for bruises on people who allege domestic abuse. People are trained to look at white skin. doctors are trained to look at white-skinned law enforcement. She wanted to make sure that people of color can also, that they will be able to detect bruises on people who might have darker skin. So that's one thing that they're funding research on. The other thing is something called Caden's Law, which we reported on last year, you may remember, on Nightly News. Caden was a 7-year-old girl who died. Her father killed her. It was horrific. There was a custody battle going on, and he had visitation even though he had a history of violence, and he killed his daughter. So that mother has been lobbying for this bill that would help kids in the custody court, family court system. Does a number of things, but basically provides money for more training of judges to make sure family court judges kind of know how to consider abuse allegations when it comes to kids.
It's so important, right? And it is gut-wrenching to hear about why, right, these women are pushing for these kinds of things. Yeah. And for Angelina Jolie, she talks a little bit about how this feels personal for her.
She said this is personal. When I kind of pressed and said, well, what does that mean, this is personal? Obviously, she's in the midst and has been fighting for custody of her children, and she can't talk about that. So she didn't want to say too much. But I think if you listen to this sound that we're going to play, you can hear that this is personal for her. This is something she really cares about and has some experience with. Take a listen. Do you think sometimes law enforcement and judges in this country are too quick to dismiss allegations of real abuse?
I think this country doesn't recognize what a serious domestic violence and child abuse problem it really has. And I think there is a reality that when somebody harms a child, if it's a stranger, the way the law looks at it, the way the law responds, it's quite strong. Right. When it's somebody within a family, within a home, it is responded to less. And if you can imagine for the child, in fact, that's in many ways worse. Mm-hmm. I think once you're exposed to this system, whoever you are, once you're exposed to it and you realize how unbelievably broken this system is, you have to do something to improve it.
It's a fact that you have been exposed to the system. Everybody knows you have had a case, as you mentioned, ongoing.
Yes, I've been in the family court system.
Yeah. Yes. Ruth, what is the significance of this being signed into law?
The significance is that many survivors who have not had their needs addressed previously will now have their needs addressed. It fills the gaps for our Native American sisters and brothers. It fills the gap for culturally specific needs and services, LGBTQI. The list goes on and on of those who have previously not been able to get the services that they should have gotten.
I feel like you can hear in that conversation with them, not just, as you said, that sort of allusion to how personal this is for Angelina Jolie, but from both of them, how wide-ranging this is, right? This has many tentacles. It touches a lot of parts of women's lives.
Yeah, it's, I mean, millions of dollars of federal grants are going to go out now because this has now been reauthorized. And I think you can get from that sound how much they both deeply care about this. And a lot of advocates have been fighting, as I said, for years for this to happen. So they were really excited to mark this today at the White House.
It was a big deal, big campaign issue, too. And now here we are. Kate Snow, it is so good to see you. Thank you
Great
for
to
this.
see you.
We're going to have more, I know, of your interview coming up. Lester Will on NBC Nightly News, 6:30 Eastern, obviously, wherever you watch your linear broadcasts. Kate Snow, thanks again. That does it for us this hour. Always good to be with you. Thank you for being with us here on NBC News Now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.